This week in the enterprise security news, Amazon EKS is getting a lot of updates in terms of security, likely because reInvent is taking place. TiVo Networks announces a new integration. A cloud security mapping startup comes out of Stealth. Recent funding announcements from Defense Storm, GoSecure, and Eclectic IQ, and more. Then we discuss the road to secure your organization with Farah Marvatuna from NetSparker. And then we wrap up the show with a special roundtable discussion on cybersecurity and diversity featuring Jackie Abrams, Gabe Gums, Mandy Logan, and Susan Bosco. Stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Detecting and responding to threats in the cloud is harder than doing it on-prem. Even when you do have the visibility you need, legacy security workflows weren't designed for the speed and complexity of cloud environments. Cloud-native security solutions from ExtraHop are purpose-built to spot threats across the hybrid attack surface, provide detailed investigation steps, and help you automate response. Request your 30-day free trial at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. CyberArray for Teams was built to help organizations stay ahead of today's evolving threat landscape and to meet today's most difficult security challenges. Fortune 500 companies like Amgen, Booz Allen Hamilton, Plexus, CVP, Fannie Mae, and Vizio, small businesses worldwide, and several branches of the U.S. military use CyberArray for Teams to close the skill gaps that put their organizations at risk and to equip their workforce with the skills to defeat their security adversaries. CyberArray for Teams. Problem solved. Visit cyberarray.it/solved to solve your training problems. Can we continue to function without facts? Cybercriminals exploit the absence of facts, harming organizations through the easiest point of entry, email. No company should claim they can stop all phishing attacks. It's about having all the facts in seconds and reducing the time it takes to respond. It's minutes versus hours and the difference between a security incident and a breach. Greathorn. See through the dark. To learn more, go to securityweekly.com/Greathorn. Face it, your data is everywhere. No matter where your data lives or what tools you use, Imperva Data Security unifies compliance, security, and privacy needs for any data store while saving you time and money. Imperva finds threats before they become a compliance or security incident, and built-in automation empowers you to remediate quickly. Give your business confidence about what is happening with your data, where it's stored, and who's accessing it. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Imperva. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly, episode 209 for December 2nd, 2020. I am your host, Paul Asadorian, joined remotely by Mr. Matt Alderman. Matt, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be back. I made it back alive, everybody.
Yes.
I'm all good.
Back from Mexico. No incidents to report, which is good.
No, none whatsoever. It was clean, smooth, clean.
And clean. Yeah, that's important. That's good. Lots of hand sanitizer. Mr. Adrian Sanabria is here with us. Adrian, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Totally an envy of that vacation. I need one myself.
Yes, very much so, especially after this year, right?
Indeed.
I do have some announcements to make. I would like to have if you would like to have all of your favorite Security Weekly content at your fingertips, learn about upcoming webcasts and technical training, or just wish you could hang out with the Security Weekly crew and community, visit securityweekly.com/subscribe, where you can sign up for our mailing list, join our community Discord server, and subscribe to all of the shows on the Security Weekly network. That's securityweekly.com/subscribe. Speaking of upcoming webcast and technical trainings, you will learn how to build a risk-based vulnerability management program. That's actually today, sponsored by Canada Security. You'll also learn how to prevent phishing scams with Greathorn. That's coming up next week. And also how to move beyond vulnerability scan to vulnerability fixed with Vulcan.io. Visit securityweekly.com/webcasts to register today for these free webinars, or visit /on demand for our previously recorded webcasts. On to the enterprise security news, which in this month of December is getting lighter and lighter, I find.
Well, last week was a short week, right?
Yeah, last week was
Thanksgiving. I was gone. I think half of Cyber Risk Alliance was gone. We only had maybe 2.5 days of work last week, so it was a little light. But man, Amazon, all kinds of AWS news in here this week,
and that is because of reInvent.
Yeah,
which is
they
always
save up.
week after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, all virtual, which I have not had a chance to attend, but I know some of the staff here has been attending. So,
and it's like a 3-week event, right? I mean,
yeah, they spread it out.
They're spreading it out over 3 weeks, so it'll, a lot of people are interested to see how that kind of spread out event looks, because everybody tries to do it in a day or a couple days packed, right?
Right.
No one's ever spread one out over a 3-week period, so it'll be interesting to see how well it does, how well it's attended. Maybe it's a better way to do it. I don't know. We'll find out.
We'll see. Adrian, sorry.
AWS reInvent is. I used to tell people, just to kind of get them going, that it was my favorite security conference. Because usually fully a third of it was security related stuff, the products are releasing, the talks and stuff like that. But if you've never been to the physical conference, once we get back to that, if we ever get back to that, it's a sight to behold. It's definitely worth checking out.
That's really cool. Some funding announcements. Defense Storm has secured $12 million in a Series B raise. What is Defense Storm?
Yeah, so I was doing some research on this one because I was like, I haven't heard of these guys before. Adrian, our list keeps getting longer, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to update it after every ESW show, but it looks like these guys are a managed service offering focused on the banking industry, I think is where they're focused. Yeah, they're built for banking matters. And so it looks like a combination of some managed services focused on the banking industry to provide broad-based cybersecurity. It's really hard to understand exactly what that means, but when you look at their website, that's kind of what they talk about is providing this threat-ready active compliance team of cybersecurity and cyber compliance experts on a 24/7 basis.
So this is a really smart approach in terms of sales and marketing, going after one vertical and trying to do a really good job at doing a whole basket full of things for that one industry. Because what you're hoping for here is if you do a good job, you get that word of mouth, and you're really speaking to that particular industry. You're not trying to take a general product and shoehorn it into 7, 8, 12 different verticals. You're just focusing on that one, and that's a great way to grow initially for a company.
Yeah, when I was doing consulting in the very, very early days, the vertical we focused on was credit unions and small banks, because they had the requirement to have security, but weren't necessarily engaged with larger organizations to get their security done. So as a smaller independent firm, we focused on those verticals through partners and things like that as well. And they have got
you could speak their language. You knew their acronyms.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The compliance was there as a driver, as well as securing people's money. So it sounds like Defense Storm is focused on that same vertical. Exactly. Probably has a lot of credit unions and smaller banks, and
yeah, because we know the large banks have
their own teams,
money and the resources to build their own teams out, but the small regional banks and the credit unions don't. So kind of a smart play here to go after that niche of the market, build very focused solutions, focus there, and call it a day.
Absolutely.
The banking regulations are far and vast and ever changing. So there's plenty of work to do in that space.
Absolutely. What else? Eclectic IQ raises $20 million to expand its portfolio and increase its global footprint. And I don't know if this is $20 million or 20 million euros.
I think 24 million euros.
24 million.
Euros,
yeah. 20 million euros, $24 million in a Series C funding.
Yeah, and I guess these are kind of like they're the threat intelligence platform, integration platform is what it looks like they're doing. So they're competing with, kind of the recorded futures and some of those other threat plays that are out there that are aggregating threat intelligence from various places, making it more actionable. That looks like where their niche is in this space. I know I've talked to them in the past. They're not a sponsor, but I have talked to them in the past. So good to see that they're getting some money, and then maybe they'll do some marketing too.
Yeah, right. We can only hope. What else? There was another funding. GoSecure raised $35 million to get. What is GoSecure? I didn't look into this one.
I did. GoSecure is a managed detection and response provider, so an MDR. Yeah, Adrian, I'm curious on this space with you for a second, right? Because I mean, MDR is popping up, and it's really interesting to me, kind of how they're starting to displace some of these MSSPs with these MDR type services. These guys are very antivirus, endpoint. They do network detection response, so they have a broader portfolio. But a lot of these MDR started with EDR managed services, but have really taken a bite out of some of the MSSPs.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's interesting because some of them use off-the-shelf software. Some of them have their own stuff. You see like a Red Canary, where they do a bit of both. They use an off-the-shelf EDR tool as a sensor to get the data, and then once they've got the data, they've got their own stuff that they use to get rid of the noise, enhance the signal, and really, I've always kind of seen it as a partial failure of the endpoint industry, because the alert fatigue problem isn't going away. Maybe we're slowly getting there, but certainly there's this huge demand for someone to come in and figure all that out for the company themselves, and to just offload that pain. Just tell me how much you need and get rid of this pain point for me.
Yeah, and it looks like these guys are doing kind of their own. They've got some interesting partnerships with like McAfee and Symantec, probably more front on the antivirus side, but it looks like they're kind of rolling their own endpoint detection agent here, but then integrated with some of the other solutions, because I don't see any EDRs. Like some of the MDRs, like you said, they'll use a CrowdStrike or a SentinelOne or something like that as the basis of their platform. It looks like here with GoSecure, they have their own endpoint agent that they're using themselves.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell in a lot of these because even if they are using something off the shelf, there's all kinds of reasons they might not want to mention who that is. In a lot of these cases, I don't really see a reason to roll your own. Maybe in a lot of these cases, they're using something like OS Query. They're using some kind of open source offering. You see a lot of that in these cases. They'll use Zeek, and they'll use Suricata and OS Query, and you pretty much have your XDR and EDR solutions open source and free rolled up there, where you can get started fairly inexpensively, and then build your own custom stuff around that, right?
Yeah. It's all about the analytics then at that point, right? You've got your sensors, now you got to build the brain.
Well, and that's it, is what you're using isn't all that important. Getting the data is, and the pain point is in figuring out what to do with all that data.
Yes.
That's the secret sauce right there.
Yep, the $1 million question. I did see a trend this week where a lot of articles were talking about poisoning the supply chain, and in Docker and in various languages and frameworks like NPM. There was an article from Sonatype that was covering this, and a whole slew of other articles. I'm not sure if it stemmed from AWS reInvent, inventors making some announcements and releasing some research reports surrounding that, but I did see a lot of research that there's a huge uptick in poisoning the supply chain with Docker containers in various languages and frameworks, further proving that it's still a problem that we haven't really gotten our arms around completely.
And especially for vendors that are using open source projects as the basis of their offering, right? If you get poisoned into some of those open source projects and they're the foundation of your solution, what's the potential risk to your business under that scenario?
Right.
Yeah, to me, this is one of the scariest things in enterprise today, especially if you're using NPM, if you're using containers. A lot of companies are still struggling with the problem of getting a list of their assets and those assets dependencies and the dependencies of those dependencies, and that rabbit hole that you end up of dependency hell that you end up going down. Much less whether or not those dependencies are trustworthy, or if the owner of that WordPress plugin just decided to sell to somebody who's undercover state actor or something like that. These are things that we've been worried about and aware of for a while, but we still don't have great solutions for.
I think Java still remains prominent in the enterprise to build applications. It also suffers from this supply chain style attack. I think Python does have some usage, but I think where many organizations are, and at least are going, are JavaScript-based frameworks that rely on Node as the package manager to build these enterprise applications. More and more, I mean, Adrian, Matt, we talk about implementing React applications because it's one of the more popular ones. Vue is also up there on the list. But these are all, packaged either in containers or in cloud-native applications that rely on these external libraries in order to build a fully functioning front end for your application that works in web browsers and on mobile applications. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's become so popular is you can build an awesome interface. Most of the solutions we see actually from our security vendors, as an example, and others are built using some type of JavaScript framework. And under the covers, they likely suffer from this problem in the supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. We
when
talk
you're a large
about this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
When you're a large enterprise and your vendor management spreadsheet has 35,000 rows in it,
yeah.
And that's not even covering dependencies. Those are direct relationships, not the indirect relationships.
Right.
It becomes, you feel the headache forming, even trying to think about how to take care of that problem.
Yeah, how do we know if it's Joe or Josephine's or both's GitHub repository that we're pulling in their library, and are they maintaining it or not? Have they passed the torch? Again, Adrian, I go back to your comment. It is one of the most concerning things for me in enterprise security for specifically software applications. Absolutely.
And we're seeing solutions start to emerge trying to address aspects of this, right? Like SNCC's doing this from
great
a
work,
dependency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great work in the library dependency and looking for the transient vulnerabilities in these packages. You've got this Lightspin's trying to do aspects of it with your cloud assets, because that's another piece of it, right? Accurix is doing aspects of this modeling and verification as part of your infrastructure's code as you're spinning this infrastructure up. So we're starting to see some interesting innovation in the space, but it's a big problem to tackle when you look at all the different components. You're looking at the infrastructure, you're looking at the containers, you're looking at the orchestrator, you're looking at the open source packages. It's a big, big problem to solve.
It is. You're right, man. When you compare that to things such as email security or endpoint security, those are almost easier problems to get your arms around when you dive into the whole DevOps toolchain set and process that could be unique for the 50 or 100 different applications you have as an enterprise. Starts to get really complex.
Yeah. And there's two sides to that problem too, right? There's the stuff that you develop that you have full control over, and then that appliance that vendor gives you, and you don't know what's baked into it. And then we get into the topic of SBOMs, software bill of materials, and I can already hear some listeners flipping tables when that acronym comes up.
Yep. I want to transition a little bit into AWS. I wanted to start with kind of a fun one, in that AWS unveils Mac instances for Amazon's ECS platform. And these are not virtual. These are physical. They're physical systems. They're loading in like truckloads of thousands of Mac Minis into Amazon's data centers. Which is,
and you have to, because it's tied to the hardware. It's tied to the firmware level, and it's very, very secure. But at the enterprise level, you've got these big, huge companies with these millions of dollars of investment into these apps that go into the App Store, and they all have to be built on a Mac Mini sitting on a desk somewhere, and it's kind of ridiculous,
I think the M1 chip is truly innovative, despite my concerns about compatibility. But the benchmarks and speed testing that I've seen is phenomenal. Even Windows running in virtualization on the M1 chip performs outstanding. And I really hope that's a picture or a glimpse into the things to come for modern computing. The SOC as your desktop or laptop processor, I think, is encouraging. I also think it's encouraging for open source too. I mean, Linux has run on ARM-based SOCs, since the beginning of time. So it's logical that if someone were to develop similar chips, that we'd have a lot more flexibility to do that, and not be locked into a Mac Mini running in a data center, right?
I'm just wondering if they're like shipping these to all of their regions, or is there like one region where they're just literally stacking Mac Minis on top of each other with the biggest fridge?
So traditionally, when Amazon announces a new product like this, when you dig into the details, you'll find, okay, it's just going to be East and West, and like it's a couple regions to start with, but it depends on where the demand is. The demand might be. And this sounds like a bit of an experiment, because most of the companies that can benefit the most from this have already been feeling this pain for 10 years or more, and they've already got their own set up internally. So it'd have to be pretty compelling for them to throw that away and say, okay, we'll just go to AWS. So I would expect to find this only in a couple regions.
It's interesting. The next article I found, 3 articles, all related to the topic of securing Amazon's EKS, and those announcements come from Aqua, Weaveworks, and one other one. Sysdig, of course. Yes.
Yeah. So this is a huge story.
Yeah.
This is Amazon creating software. This is not a cloud service. This is them releasing their own distro. For Kubernetes.
Yeah, I see that. I'll talk about the new Amazon EKS distro, EKSD, and this is from Weaveworks and other vendors that obviously were working with Amazon when they were developing this distribution, it sounds like.
Right. And I think here's what's interesting about the story, Adrian. I don't want to take your thunder if you're not going to here, but
take it.
I mean, an EKS distro that can run in your environment, but gives you a pathway to EKS services in AWS later. They're going after the hybrid environment, and I think this is a smart play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there have been signs of this for a while. Their partnerships with VMware, and their edge services, the Snowball and stuff like that, where you can take bits of the AWS stack and put it on premises. Sometimes temporarily, some components of that permanently. When Inspector came out, that was a big deal, that they let you run Inspector in your own data center and in your own environments. And that was, they played around with open sourcing some of this software for a while. So this has been something it's not a new concept for them. It's something that's been on their mind for a while.
The feedback I heard earlier in the year was it was expensive to run it in EKS in Amazon's cloud. And therefore, the companies would spin stuff up, and then they get their bill and be like, oh my God, and they kind of peel back and start doing things on premise. I think this is Amazon's obvious answer to that. To go, well, you don't have to necessarily run it in our cloud, but once you tie people to that platform, maybe they start to run pieces of it in Amazon's cloud.
Yeah, and I think it's because Kubernetes has become the de facto orchestrator.
It has.
Remember, this was not their first containerized service. It was ECS. They built their own custom containerized orchestration platform, is Amazon ECS. Kubernetes took off. They had to build an EKS equivalent for Kubernetes. To your point, Paul, probably doesn't run as efficiently because it's not their own proprietary. They've got to take the open source Kubernetes from Google.
Yep.
Build a whole platform capability around it.
Well, it runs well in Amazon's cloud, but it's not as connected to all of the other Amazon infrastructure and services as is ECS. And when I researched the differences between Amazon's EKS and Amazon's ECS, basically after reading a dozen articles or so, what I gleaned was EKS scales about 5, maybe 10 times more than ECS. It's totally a scalability thing. So if you don't have tens of thousands or millions of users, you're probably going to go with ECS and it's more integrated. Or if you're not, then EKS allows you to scale up a lot more. That's what I learned.
And this now allows enterprises to leverage a consistent Kubernetes distribution on-prem and in the cloud. So Weaveworks makes it brings it into their platform so that you can orchestrate it and bring that distro in. Then you have Aqua and Sysdig now providing capabilities to protect containers running in that EKS distro.
And another benefit here is Amazon is obsessive about removing complexity and attack surface from their software. When Amazon does software, this is just part of their process that they go through. And as an example, if you remember the named vulnerability Venom, that was a vulnerability in the Zen hypervisor a number of years ago, probably 5 or more years ago. that's what Amazon's EC2 was based on, was Zen, but the vulnerability didn't affect them. All the other cloud providers, Rackspace, everybody had to patch and had to reboot 100% of customer instances. And the thing was, the Venom vulnerability was in the virtual floppy controller within Zen. And years before this came out, Amazon was like, what do we need a virtual floppy controller for in the cloud? Let's tear that out of there, get that out of here. And so it didn't affect them because they had already stripped out all this additional attack surface, all this additional code in Zen that they didn't need. And they've long since forked from the open version of Zen and gotten rid of a lot of that cruft. So I would expect to see the same stuff, when they come out with their own Kubernetes distro, and when they come out with software, they have that mindset where they're going to remove any additional attack surface that they can. So that's an additional benefit of rolling with some Amazon software.
Let's see, where else do we want to go? That's a good series of stories. Ativo Networks and Sentinel-1. I like, in having spent some time with Ativo Networks, obviously they're a sponsor. Their integrations, I think, with other endpoint security products is a really good play for them. That deception and Active Directory security components that they bring in conjunction with your endpoint security products, I think, is a great win. You can, lure people to a certain point and make sure your endpoint protection is giving you further telemetry and also further protection.
Yeah, and this one and the Malwarebytes one are both going after some of the credential attacks at the endpoint. You see that in the Ativo announcement. You also see it in the Malwarebytes announcement, where they're adding some brute force attack, credential stuffing attack capabilities onto their endpoint agent. I think as you see users moving remote, all these vendors are trying to figure out how to add some additional protections into their endpoint agents to protect against some of these potentially remotely exploitable attacks. And both of those had similar components to them.
Wait, there was something else. Oh, DFLabs. We haven't talked about DFLabs in a while. I like DFLabs. I like the product. I love the team and the product. Great stuff. And they have made a full SaaS cloud package that allows you to implement SOAR, which is great. I think it puts them in a better position in the market.
Well, it's interesting. They call it SaaS, but it's a cloud package. So I thought that was a little interesting, how they're packaging up to allow you to kind of stand up in the cloud. I don't know that it's a pure 100% SaaS-based offering, because when I hear the term package, I'm thinking, all right, I'm in Azure, I can spin it up in Azure environment and run it.
DIY SaaS is an oxymoron.
Right.
And
they're moving in the right direction, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything can't be on-prem, especially in this environment. So the ability to spin it up in cloud infrastructure makes a lot of sense. I just don't think that it's a multi-tenant SaaS-based offering.
Gotcha.
Yeah, SaaS suggests that you're offloading that maintenance and management piece, that the vendor's doing that for you, right?
Right. Also, it gives you a little more control in this instance as well, rather than having it fully SaaS-based.
Yeah, and maybe you want some of that flexibility in your SOAR. Maybe you don't want a multi-tenant SaaS-based application. I don't know. I haven't played with enough of these tools to kind of really know what are the limitations between a multi-tenant environment versus having full control of your own. There might be some advantages to that.
Yeah, and you've always got the folks that want to be able to run it themselves, so, a pure SaaS company is always having those conversations, hey, can I run this in my environment? No, no, it's got to be us who runs it. Otherwise that breaks the whole model of, feature releases and all that. Yeah.
And,
our instance at Qualys, yeah.
Well, in our instance with our website hosting, you want it close to your other applications that you're integrated with. And in some cases, you just got to hope that they're in the same cloud provider that you are, or have a way to spin it up in your cloud provider so that it can work more seamlessly and be integrated in performant. If you don't have any of those options, you're kind of just at the mercy, right?
Yeah. I mean, we dealt with those issues for years when I was at Qualys.
Yeah.
People wanting to run it on-prem. How do you manage a SaaS platform on-prem? I mean, we used to literally ship a rack of hardware that was managed by the Qualys team for the at-customer installations, so that we could keep everything updated and centrally managed. But that that was a pretty big burden to box up a rack of gear and ship it to a customer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. There was just one last article. CyberMDX is integrating its healthcare security suite into Philips Cybersecurity Services. Of course, healthcare is under attack in a big way from ransomware in particular, largely because if you do manage to take out a hospital, they're likely to pay. I think that's the monetization method of de jure of attackers today. I was listening to some podcast and they were talking about that shift that they went from not completely, but they realized that stealing financial data directly wasn't as easy to monetize or didn't net them as much profit as it was to just ransomware, right? I'm already in the network, I'm just going to ransomware it rather than try and find the financials and then go sell them at the black market. I'm already in the network, might as well just get the money here. And that was the one of the things that's led to that ransomware being more prominent today than ever before.
Yeah, and if you think about the environment with all these critical medical device systems, and you have the ability to lock some of those up, I mean, this is health and safety. This is life,
especially
and death
with COVID
type of situation. Yeah,
which is kind of a really dreary thought, but yeah.
I mean, so this is a shift we've seen in attacker behavior, pretty big one in the last couple of years, and I think we're almost a decade out from when Mandiant popularized the APT term, advanced persistent threat, and of course what we'd advise is, hey, you're not that special. You're not being targeted by state-funded attackers. APT is not something you have to worry about. And at some point, after they tried opportunistic ransomware, and then they realized how much money they could get going after a single entity, and going after the whole company, all their systems. When they realized that could be a 5 or 6 digit or even 7 digit in some cases sum for them, all of a sudden it became worth it for them to be more advanced and, well, maybe not more advanced, but certainly more persistent. And we've seen that shift now, and some of those APT style behaviors that previously we only associated with state-funded hackers. We're seeing filtering down into the more mundane, less advanced, less sophisticated criminal groups.
That will conclude the enterprise news for today. Stay tuned. Farah Mavatuna from NetSparker coming up next.